Story 1. The Whispering Tent. Sam and Lucas loved camping far from the city. They liked the quiet forest, the fresh air, and the shining stars. One cold night, they set up their tent beside a small lake. The water looked black under the moonlight, and the trees around them stood tall like dark guards. After dinner, they sat by the fire. "It's too quiet," Lucas said. "That's the best part," Sam replied. But as the fire burned low, they began hearing something. A soft sound, like someone whispering. Sam looked around. "Did you hear that?" Lucas nodded. "Probably the wind." They tried to ignore it, but the whisper grew louder. It came from the trees, then from the lake. Then, disturbingly, it sounded like it came from just behind their tent. Lucas stood up, shining his flashlight at the forest. "Hello? Anyone there?" No answer. They went inside the tent to sleep. The whispering stopped for a moment, and they felt calmer, until something dragged slowly across the outside of the tent, circling it like a predator. Sam grabbed Lucas's arm. "What is that?" "An animal," Lucas whispered, but he didn't sound sure. The dragging stopped right by Sam's head. Then a voice whispered, very clearly this time, "Let me in." Sam and Lucas froze. The voice didn't sound human, but it also didn't sound like an animal. It sounded wrong. Lucas finally shouted, "Leave us alone." Silence. Then, suddenly, hands slapped the tent, hard. 1, 2, 3, 4, many hands, pushing inward, pressing the fabric. The boys screamed and jumped out of the tent. They ran into the forest with their flashlights shaking in their hands. They didn't stop until they reached a ranger station. The ranger listened carefully and took them back to the campsite at sunrise. But when they returned, something strange waited for them. Their tent was still zipped closed. When the ranger opened it, they gasped. Inside the tent were 2 sleeping bags. And inside the sleeping bags were Sam and Lucas. Perfectly still, cold, lifeless. Sam and Lucas felt sick. They looked at the bodies inside, faces pale and peaceful, like they had been asleep for years. The ranger turned to the 2 boys standing beside him. "Who?" he said slowly. "Are you?" Sam tried to answer, but no sound came out. And then they heard it again. The whisper, right behind them. Story 2. The Girl at the Campfire. Ethan, Maya, and Jordan went camping every summer. This year they chose a forest famous for beautiful stars and strange stories. People said a ghost walked there at night, but the 3 friends didn't believe in ghosts. Their first night started normally. They made a fire, cooked marshmallows, and told jokes. But late at night, when the fire was almost out, they heard footsteps approaching. A girl stepped into the firelight. She looked about 13, with long dark hair and a white dress that seemed dirty and old. "Can I sit with you?" she asked softly. The friends looked at each other. Sure," Maya said kindly. The girl sat near the fire. She didn't blink. She didn't smile. She just stared at the flames like she hadn't seen fire in a long time. "What's your name?" Ethan asked. The girl looked up slowly. "I don't remember." They laughed awkwardly, thinking she was joking. But then she added, "I've been looking for my parents for a long time. They left me in the forest. I can't find my way home." Jordan whispered to Maya, "This is weird." Maya nodded. The girl suddenly pointed toward the trees. "They're calling me. Do you hear them?" "No," Maya said. "We don't hear anything." The girl tilted her head. "You will." Before they could reply, the girl stood up and walked into the darkness. The friends waited and waited, but she never came back. They tried to sleep, but in the middle of the night, Maya woke up to a sound. Someone crying outside the tent. Maya unzipped the flap carefully and froze. The girl was standing right there, inches from the tent. Her hair covered her face. She whispered, "They found me." The others woke up and crawled out of the tent. In the darkness behind the girl, They saw dozens of tall, thin shapes. People, but wrong. They had no faces, only shadows. The girl pointed at Ethan, Maya, and Jordan. They're lost too. The shadow figures glided forward. Jordan screamed, "Run!" They ran through the forest until they reached their car and sped away. The next morning, they reported what happened. The police listened quietly, then showed them an old picture. A missing girl from 20 years ago. She looked exactly like the girl they saw. But there was something worse. Everyone who claims to see her, the officer said, dies in the forest within a year. The friends stared at each other in fear. Then the officer added, "And you said she spoke to you?" They nodded. The officer swallowed hard. "She only speaks to the ones she chooses." Story 3. The Extra Sleeping Bag. Tom and his younger brother Ben went camping to watch a meteor shower. They arrived at the campsite late, built a fire, and set up their tent. The air was cold, and the night smelled like pine needles and damp earth. Inside the tent, Ben arranged their things and suddenly frowned. "Tom, why is there an extra sleeping bag?" Tom looked. There were 3 sleeping bags, but they only brought 2. He laughed nervously. "Maybe we packed an old one." Ben shook his head. "No, I've never seen this one before." The 3rd sleeping bag was darker, older, and looked used. Tom didn't want to scare Ben, so he said, "Maybe the last campers left it." They shoved it aside and went to sleep. At around 2 a.m., Tom woke to the sound of the zipper moving. Sp. He looked around. Ben was asleep, but the extra sleeping bag was open. Tom's stomach tightened. Something had climbed out of it. He heard a soft shuffle behind him. Slow breathing. Right next to his ear. He didn't dare turn around. Then a voice whispered, "Move over." Tom jumped away and shouted for Ben, who woke up confused. "What happened?" Ben asked. Tom pointed at the empty sleeping bag. Something was in there. Before they could do anything, the sleeping bag slowly sat upright, as if someone invisible was inside. Ben screamed. Tom grabbed him, and they ran out of the tent. The forest was silent. Too silent. Then they heard footsteps following them. Soft, dragging footsteps. They reached the car and locked the doors. Tom grabbed the flashlight and pointed it at the tent. The tent zipper was slowly opening. A tall, thin figure stepped out. Its body was blurry, like smoke shaped into a person. It bent down, picked up the extra sleeping bag, and dragged it back into the trees. Ben whispered, "What does it want?" Tom swallowed hard. It wanted a place to sleep. As they drove away, Tom looked in the rearview mirror. For a moment, a dark figure sat in the back seat. And then, it faded like mist.